Hey guys, it's Brian again from LakeHickoryScuba and Marina. We're going to go ahead and kick this video off with our Q&A session. Last week we posted a video asking you guys to ask us questions, and we got quite a few responses. We got several questions that was asked time and time again by different people, and those are the ones we kind of plucked out of the pool of questions that we got that we're going to answer today. We've got them from several different sources: YouTube. Got several through Gmail or our email account. Got several from Scubaboard. We've had students throughout the week ask us questions that we thought would be good to lump in here, so we're going to add those in too and do our best to answer them. So we'll start with, let's see here. We'll start with Scubaboard questions. So let me get it brought up here, and I got couple screens brought up here. It makes it a little bit easier for me. So let's see here. And hopefully this will help you out with some of the questions that you had. So like I said, we'll start with some of the Scubaboard questions that we got in some of our message or private messages here. This one was actually posted on Scubaboard, and a response that I put on there, I got a private message from a guy, but it says, do you prefer back inflate or jacket style BCDs? It really depends on what application I'm using that particular BCD for. Depends on what type of diving I'm doing. In a teaching situation as a dive instructor, I prefer the jacket style over the back inflate. You know, traditionally speaking, the jacket style BCD is going to keep you in this upright position. So as an instructor, we spend a lot of time at the surface. Even just in a swimming pool, we spend a lot of time at the surface talking with students, demonstrating for students, stuff like that. So I want to be in that upright position. Though back inflates help us keep trimmed out better under the water, at the surface they do have this tendency to lean us forward a little bit, and there's ways that you can fix that. You can wear a steel tank versus aluminum. You can put trim weights and trim pouches on the back, or you can thread weights onto the tank cam straps or whatnot. But traditionally they do lean you forward a little bit. And when I'm dealing with students in just recreational scuba, most of the time at the surface I want to be in an upright position. I don't want to have to fight that urge to have to kick myself to lean back or whatnot. So I prefer the jacket style for that. Any other type of diving outside of teaching, by all means, I prefer the back inflate. Now, I primarily wear a back plate and wing. I don't wear just a traditional back inflate system. Mine's a custom built back plate and wing. So, and it depends on the diving that I'm doing too. I have a specific one that I use when I do public safety diving. Our shop runs a salvage crew. So when I'm doing underwater salvage, I have a specific back plate and wing that I use. And then I also have a third back plate and wing that I use for when I do side mount diving. So it depends on that application. For teaching, it's the jacket style, primarily a back inflate with any other type of diving that I do. That was a good question. Let's see here. See if there's another one on Scubaboard that... One second here. Get rid of that one so we don't. Alright. This was also off of Scubaboard. Kind of goes along with that last question. Which do you prefer better, the weight belt or the weight integrated? This was a question that we actually found that, or that we shot a video on a while back too. Weight belts versus weight integrated systems. Depending on how much weight you're wearing, depending on the disbursement of that weight, because you want it to be equally dispersed amongst your body, and depending on the diving that you're going to do, depends on whether you're going to wear a weight belt or weight integrated. Now, as far as what I prefer to do, I prefer the weight integrated system. I grew up here in the South, and I love simplicity. Meaning, I want to put one unit on and be done. I don't want to have to add extra components. Like, let's talk about a compass for a second. You can have a console mount, You can have a wrist mount, or you can have the compass that just clips onto you, whether it's on a slate or it just clips on. There's all different types. I prefer the console mount compass because it's one unit. Same thing with the weights. I prefer to have a weight integrated unit so that when I put on my BC, I'm done. I don't have to add that extra weight belt. Then again, it does go back to the type of diving that I'm doing. When I'm teaching, I primarily wear a weight belt system. Most open water students, I'm going to say less than 15% of our students actually buy gear before their open water certification. So we put most of them in just a traditional jacket style, traditional weight belt. If that's what they're going to wear for class, that's what I typically wear to teach them in. So I don't mind wearing the weight belt, but as far as just personal diving, yeah, I prefer the weight integrated over the weight belt itself. Now, of course, with that being said, the last question where we talked about the BCDs, and I said that I primarily wear back plate and wing systems. All my systems that I wear, they're balanced rigs, which means I don't have to add any extra weight to them. I have them pre-balanced out for whatever type of suit that I wear. So, and it's, when it goes to that weight system in general, all my back plate and wings are still back plates. I don't own any that are aluminum, so that gives me that little bit extra weight that I have to wear. But in general, I actually prefer the weight integrated system over the weight belt. So let's see here. Get rid of Scubaboard here. That can come off Scubaboard. Alright, let's see here. We've got a couple questions here on Twitter. Get it brought up. My eyes don't work as good as they used to, so. Here's one that says, what is your favorite class to teach? I'd have to say, all in all, probably open water is my absolute favorite, just for a simple fact, it gets people involved into the sport. You know, the world's covered of 75% of water, 25% of it's land, and we only inhabit about 10%. So the most part of the world is water. That to go and experience that, you got to take the open water course. So I enjoy taking a non-diver, open their eyes to the underwater world, and certifying them as divers. Now, with that being said, that's my absolute favorite to teach. My second favorite is actually two classes, and they're in a dead tie. One, of course, is navigation. I really enjoy teaching navigation. I love being able to take a diver and teaching him that if he starts at point A to get to point B, there's several ways that you can do that very, very accurately. Whether you're using a compass for navigation, whether you're using natural navigation and landmarks that are there and established and that you know. Maybe you're using sloping bottoms. Here in the lake we have a lot of sloping bottoms, and you can use that to your advantage when you're navigating. Even if it's something as simple as a line navigation. We have several quarries in our area that has hundreds of things to go look at, and they're all connected by lines. And underwater it kind of looks like a spider web, and there's all these lines. And being able to know which line leads to what object underwater, you know, using that line navigation, it helps that diver out. So I really enjoy teaching navigation because navigation does a couple things. First of all, it teaches you how to navigate. Two, it teaches you how to multitask, because primarily you're going to be navigating, especially if you're using a compass. You're going to be maintaining your buoyancy, so it teaches you buoyancy control. You're going to maintain your air supply. You always have to be vigilant of that, so it's going to teach you to be vigilant. And then also to be aware of your nitrogen loading. Now, even if you're using a computer, and a lot of computers you can set it up to it'll beep at a certain time or whatnot, you still got to be vigilant of that stuff. You still have to look. So navigation kind of helps in all four of them areas, and I really like teaching navigation because of that. It makes you more vigilant as a diver, makes you more informed as a diver, makes you a more well-rounded and educated diver, so I really like navigation. The other one that is a very close second, and it probably ties with navigation, for over the last decade, I've had a part-time career in the public service. I've worked as a deputy sheriff, a police officer, a firefighter, and EMT for our local EMS, in which I'm still an EMT and firefighter currently. But with that being said, I was able to combine that with my passion for scuba diving, and I teach a lot of public safety and underwater crime scene courses. And so I really have, I guess you could say, a double passion for that. So that's a very close second with navigation for me. Of course, number one being open water. A close second would be either navigation or the public safety courses. That was a pretty good question. So here's another one off Twitter. It says, where's your favorite place to dive? I'm not sure I have just that one particular place that I love to go dive. I would have to say, all in all, my local environment is where I like to dive the most. For one reason, we're here on a public lake. It's free. It doesn't cost you nothing to go get out here in the water. As long as you've got public access, you can go diving. So I really enjoy that. If I had to pick a place, once again, it's going to determine what type of diving I'm doing. I'd have to say, as an instructor, my favorite place would be Jenny Springs out of Florida. Okay, it's in the High Springs area of Florida. It's only about an 8-hour trip for us. We make weekend trips there once a month. So the reason I like it as an instructor, it's an open environment. It's great visibility year round. The temperature is a constant 72 degrees year round. So in the summertime when it's really hot, 72 feels great, cools you off. In the wintertime when the temperature drops in the 30s and 40s, the water's still 72. Almost feels a little bit kind of like bath water. So it's great for an all-around year dive. It's not too harsh of conditions. I know sometimes out in the ocean, if the seas get pretty rough, sometimes it's difficult to teach an open water class, or even just a rescue class for that matter. So Jenny Springs allows me to teach a lot of different classes there, anywhere from open water, advanced rescue, dive master level, assistant instructor courses, instructor courses. I can teach them there. Of course, you got the Santa Fe that you can do drift diving down. You got caverns and caves. If you take a cavern or cave course, they're great places. You can teach tech diving there. There's not much depth that you can get even in the caves themselves as far as the teching goes, but it's just so versatile to be able to teach there all the different classes that we offer. So with that being said, I'd have to say, as an instructor, Jenny Springs is by far my favorite place to go dive as an instructor. Just as a diver, I'd have to say my local environment, because it's cheap, it's free, it doesn't cost me nothing. And a lot of our local divers, especially on our lake, the visibility is kind of poor. The temperatures fluctuate year round. We do have multiple thermoclines here in the lake. So it does have a good wide range of diving, and it will increase your skills as a diver, but it's free. It doesn't really cost you much more than, say, an air fill. So if you got your own gear, even if you got your own tank and you need it filled, that's all it's really going to cost you, just air fill. There's plenty of wildlife accesses that are free to the public to use. So, just for me personal, I like our local environment. All right. So let's see here. That was from Twitter. Let's see. Got our email brought up here. We've got some questions in email. Let's see. Here's one. This one come from email. It looks like somebody asked it off our actual website. They went to our contact page and put this one in. It says, have you had a name change? Your site used to say Scuba Center. Now it says Scuba and Marina. And I'm assuming this is from our logo. I don't know if you can see it on this screen here. This is our logo here, if you could see it. And it says Lake Hickory Scuba and Marina. And back when we started, it used to say Lake Hickory Scuba Center. Our corporation is actually Lake Hickory Scuba Center Incorporated. As far as tax purposes and all that, that's what we're called. That's our charter. We did actually change names though. When we first started our company, we started out in a very, very small 500 square foot section of a marina. It happens to be the marina that we own now, but we were leasing just that small little section of the marina for our dive shop. And at the time, the owner of the marina was looking to get out. He was going to sell out his ownership. And we were fortunate enough that we was able to take over that company. And so we merged his company with ours, hence the name change from Lake Hickory Scuba Center to Lake Hickory Scuba and Marina. And all we did was just took the marina part added it to our name and dropped the word center off. But for legal purposes, we are still Lake Hickory Scuba Center Incorporated. For promotional purposes and everything else, we changed our name to Lake Hickory Scuba Center, or Lake Hickory Scuba and Marina. So let's see, here's another one I'm going to lump in as kind of a separate question here. It says, why is your phone number changed? Kind of the same reason since buying out the Marina. A little history on what used to be called Taylorsville Beach Marina. This marina has been in business since the 1950s, and it's went through several different owners, but it's had the same phone number for as long as I can remember. So we took it, since it's already established, what we did was took our old number, the 828, God, I can't even remember it, 828-455-6556, and we forwarded it to our new number, which is the Marina's old number, 828-632-7649. And I think until June of this year, the old number will still work. It just gets forwarded to this one. But if you see some of our older videos compared to our newer videos, and even in our description below our YouTube videos, you'll see the old ones has got the old number, the new one's got the new number, and even our logo itself, it has the new phone number on it. So that's why the number changed. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go to Facebook. This one brought up here. Okay. This one here says, this one says, why does LHSC, Lake Hickory Scuba Center, offer different training agencies? We train through 4 different agencies. We train through PADI, the Professional Association of Dive Instructors. We train through SEI, Scuba Educators International, CMAS, otherwise known as the Underwater Society of America, and we also train through PDIC, which is the Professional Dive Instructors Corporation. There's several reasons we chose those 4 to be able to teach to newer divers and to existing divers. We'll start with PADI first and foremost. PADI is one of the largest agencies out there. They have the most resources for instructors to use. The resources that they have are great for us. The training material is awesome. The videos they use, the books, it's great for a business to use. Primarily though with PADI, one benefit that they allow us to do as instructors is we can teach someone as young as 10 years old. Okay, so if I had a family come in and say it's a husband, wife, and a son and a daughter, and the son's 10-year-old, the daughter's 18, the husband and wife, of course, in their 30s, 40s, whatnot. If I wanted to teach all of them the same course, I would have to resort to teaching PADI, because PADI allows me to train that 10-year-old. Otherwise, I would have to teach 3 of them, say PDIC or a different one, and then I'd have to get that kid and say, well, okay, I'm going to have to train you at a different time on PADI. So PADI allows me to train down to a 10-year-old, and I can put the whole family into that one class. Now, as far as the other courses, or the other agencies like SEI and PDIC and CMAS, they're a little bit harder to get certified in because they're a much more in-depth course to take. You learn up to 5 or 6 more skills in the open water portion of SEI and PDIC than what you actually learn in PADI. I believe in their training philosophy, meaning they actually teach rescue skills and scenarios in the open water course, because the number of divers that go beyond open water is very, very slim. So if you took 100 divers who took open water class and got certified, I'm going to say less than 50 go on to the advanced. I'm going to say less than 50% of those go on to take rescue and this, that, and the other. And I believe in teaching some of those rescue skills in the open water portion, because even as an instructor, if I get an Insta buddy on a dive boat and he happens to be just an open water diver, well, sure, I can take care of him. I have the training skills, knowledge, and experience to take care of him in an emergency. But what if that emergency happens to me? Does that diver have the training skills, knowledge, and experience to actually take care of me during that emergency? And if they're trained through PDIC or SEI, they're going to have those rescue skills needed to take care of me just as an open water diver. So we believe here at Lake Hickory Scuba and Marina, we believe in those training philosophies of the other agencies. Now, to go a little bit more depth on why we chose, for the ones that know what the WRSTC or the RSTC is, which is the World Recreational Scuba Training Council, or the Recreational Scuba Training Council, PDIC and PADI are two of the founding members of that training council, and they're the ones that set basically the training standards that most agencies, even the members that are not a part of that, they're still the ones that set the standards that most agencies adopt their training standards from. And so PADI and PDIC was kind of a no-brainer. We like having that backing from the WRSTC, and we agree with their training standards, so we picked that. With SEI, if you know much about Scuba Educators International, they were formed in 2008, and they are the predecessor of the YMCA Scuba program, or what was called the Y Scuba. And when the YMCA said we're shutting down our Scuba program, a lot of instructors got together and they said, "Oh, you can shut it down, but we're still going to train because it's a great training agency." So they started Scuba Educators International. Now, the CEO of SEI is the same CEO of PDIC, so it's the same information, same curriculum, same training standards, and most of the time, if I issue you a PDIC open water card, you will also get an SEI open water card for it too. We can do dual certifications through that, so that's why we chose those. As far as CMAS goes, here in America, Scuba Educators International is the only training agency that CMAS will recognize. So if you get a SEI certification, you can get a dual certification through CMAS. So those three, PDIC, SEI, and CMAS, kind of all come together. It's like one big parent company, and these are all the individual sister companies out of them. So that was more of a, I guess, more of a budgetary reason that we did it. But two, like I said, PDIC is part of the WRSTC and RSTC. SEI is the same, basically the same company. It's the old Y program. It's a great training agency. It's really going to challenge the divers to get that. And of course, CMAS, they recognize SEI certification. So you get, if you take one of our SEI courses, you will get a CMAS certification out of it also. So that's why we train through what we train through. Let's see here. Here's one on Facebook. This is actually from a while back. It says, should I buy a dry suit or just a thicker wetsuit? And we get asked this quite a bit. It's really going to be personal preference. It's kind of a myth that you can't use a wetsuit when it gets cold, because we have a lot of divers around here that will wear like two-piece 6.5 mils or a full 7 mil jumpsuit up to a full 8 mil jumpsuit. We have several divers that wear, of course, semi-dries, which are pretty much glorified wetsuits also. And then a lot of us, we do wear dry suits. It's personal preference for you as the diver. If you can budget the cost in for a dry suit and you don't mind taking the training for it so that you can do it safely, go with the dry suit by all means. If you don't have the funds for it, then stick with the wetsuit. Get you more experience under your belt, get comfortable, and then slowly work your way up to the dry suit itself. If you have a local dive shop who rents dry suits or allows you to take their dry suit course without actually buying a dry suit, we teach a lot of dry suit courses that we don't actually even sell the dry suit to the student. We just allow the student to use one of ours. That's great, because that's going to give you the ability to try it, get certified in it, see if you like it, and then if you do, then you can actually go out and buy that dry suit. But it's all in your comfort level. If you like the idea of a dry suit, but you like the feel of a wetsuit, then if you do buy a dry suit, get you a neoprene. There's several companies out there that make neoprene dry suits. And in my opinion, neoprene dry suits are the warmest type dry suits out there. They have the added benefit, if a malfunction occurs or if the suit does leak, it kind of reverts back to being a wetsuit, so you're still going to have some insulation. So yeah, I would go with a dry suit if you could afford one. Now, if you do go with that dry suit, there's several different types. You got shell base, whether they're bilaminate, trilaminate. Of course, you got neoprene, you got vulcanized rubber, and there's hybrid suits where part of it's neoprene, part of it's not. Depends on what you're comfortable wearing. I personally wear a tri-laminate suit, and there's several reasons I do that. One, I do a lot of public safety diving, and for hazmatic purposes, I don't like to wear a neoprene suit when I'm doing that, because oil and gas off cars, if maybe I'm doing a salvage, a car went in a lake or something like that, it can eat through neoprene fairly quickly. There's companies out there that make some good neoprene dry suits, and they claim that they got this certain type of neoprene that's, it can't be torn up. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've not had a neoprene suit, be it dry suit or wetsuit, that I've not tore up. So it can still be torn up. With that being said, vulcanized rubber is probably going to be the safest to use for hazmatic purposes, but they're a pain in the butt to use. So that's why I kind of went with the tri-laminate. I still have the hazmat protection from the environment that I'm getting in. I have the lightweightness of the tri-laminate. I don't have to wear quite as much weight as what I do with the neoprene dry suit, but I'm going to have to wear thicker undergarments in colder environments, so I kind of have to wear more weight to balance that out. So, but it's really personal preference. If you are content diving with a wetsuit and you can get you a two-piece or a thicker suit, go with a wetsuit. If you got the funds to get you a dry suit and you don't mind taking the training, get you a dry suit. But that's going to be a personal preference for you. In our area, we have a lot of divers doing both. I primarily, until the water now just for personal diving, until the water gets down to the 60s, I'm in a wetsuit. Once it gets a little below 60, then I start going into the dry suit. So, but it's going to be personal preference for you. Okay, let's see here. Let's see what we got left. Let's see. We'll go to this one last. See if there's any more here on Facebook. Okay. Here's one. This come from a student of ours. This was posted on Facebook, but this come from one of our students. It says, should I become a dive instructor? And I would say yes. Yeah, if it's something you got a passion for, I would say take your time. Be very, very patient with it. Don't do what we call a zero to hero, where you start at point A as a non-diver, you finish at point B as an instructor, and you just go class to class to class to class to class. Don't do that. There are prerequisites in being a dive instructor, and most agencies are pretty consistent with it as far as how many dives you got to have logged, what certifications you got to have, or prerequisite certifications. So take your time at being a dive instructor if that's what you want to be. Make sure you get plenty of experience. I would even suggest taking classes that maybe you're not interested in, because as a dive instructor, you may be in a position that you need to teach those classes for income or whatnot, for whatever purposes. So, yeah, if you want to be a dive instructor, by all means, set that as your goal and reach for the stars, man, and go off and be a dive instructor. It's been great for me to be a dive instructor. I've got to meet a lot of new people. I've got to experience a lot of neat dives. I've got to go all over the U.S. and dive. So, yeah, by all means, if you want to be a dive instructor, absolutely. Reach for the stars on that one. Okay, let's bring this screen over. This question was actually, this is an older question on Scubaboard, which we ended up shooting a video for on YouTube. You can go and watch that video. But it says, do you use a dive computer or dive tables? And just like in the video, I'll answer it like I did in the video. Let me get rid of this real quick. Yes, I use a dive computer. I also use that dive computer as a supplement to using the dive tables in itself. I call myself an old school diver, meaning I was trained on dive tables, analog depth gauges, analog pressure gauges, just a standard Walmart special G-Shock Casio watch as a bottom timer. And so I had to plan all my dives using the dive table when I first got into diving. Now, I've been using a computer for years, but I still always go back to that table to plan it with, and as a fallback. If your dive computer malfunctions on the dive, if it fails, if it floods, the battery dies, as long as you have a bottom timer, you have some type of analog depth gauge, you know how deep you are and how long you've been there, you can still calculate your residual nitrogen using a set of dive tables. Now, what do I typically do is I'll plan a dive using my tables. I'll use the dive computer itself during the dive, but with me on every trip I go, I always carry a spare set of gauges. Okay, just standard analog pressure and depth gauge. Even if I don't use them, they're in my box. I can easily screw them onto the first stage, and I've got them. I also either wear a backup dive computer on my wrist that is not a primary. I have a primary that mounts to my first stage. Then I have a backup here. Now, I have two main backups. One is a full-fledged dive computer, digitalized. The one I have here, it's a very, very basic. It has a log built in. It's got an analog depth gauge on it. It's got a temperature gauge. But primarily, it's got the depth gauge and how long I'm there. But the reason I also carry that spare gauge, the analog gauge, it's got an analog pressure gauge on it, is because if my computer dies, I still know how deep I am. I still know how long I am. So I can calculate residual nitrogen. I can fall back on my tables to plan my second dive. And then so that I know how much air I have for that second dive, all I do is just unscrew my computer from my first stage, plug in my standard pressure gauge into the first stage, and now I resort back to my training, how I learned over 20-some years ago, and I can continue my dive, and I don't have to end that dive simply because my computer died. Now, with that being said, I've only had a dive computer in the last 20 years. The battery actually fell on it and you know, quit working underwater as far as the battery dying. Now, I've had some mishaps where I personally didn't get the back of the computer or the battery compartment screwed on tight enough, or my O-ring was kinked or something, and it's flooded and ruined the computer. But as far as the actual battery dying, I've only had that once in the last 20-some years. So, but I still always carry a set of dive tables with me on every trip that I go. Depending on what BCD I'm wearing, if I got a jacket style that has large pockets, I'll even put the dive tables in my pocket itself, because most companies make waterproof dive tables. You can pull them out underwater, you can read them. So yes, I use a dive computer, but I also use it as a supplement to planning my dives with the dive tables. So, but that was a very good question. But guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. Send us an email, look us up on Scubaboard, send us a private message, give us a call. We have students that constantly ask us questions, and they're usually the same ones over and over and over. What I'll do is I'll list these questions down below in the comments below. That way, if one of your questions is the same, you can review this video and kind of see our answers on that. But just send us any comment or concerns that you got, or any questions, and we'll be happy to answer it. Even if you send us a question we don't feature on our channel here, we will still respond to you. We may just not put it in the videos. What we're trying to do is pick out the questions that are most common that we get asked repeatedly over time and time again. So that's why we list those. But if you ask us a question, we will respond to you in one way or the other. So guys, make sure you follow us on Twitter. Make sure you like us on Facebook. Pin us on Pinterest. Hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. And as always, guys, we appreciate your business.